Good evening, everyone. We are live. It's Tuesday, the 20th of April, and I hope you all had a great day today. We have a very interesting topic. We will talk about how did COVID-19 change management consulting. So this is a topic that someone of you great suggestions that I received about live topics for today. So for me, it's always very, very helpful if you send me suggestions so that I know what you want to know. I'm back. Sorry, I had connectivity issues. So again, today we have a very interesting topic. We will talk about how did COVID-19 change management consulting. And what I wanted to say before my connectivity issues was that I want to thank you for all of your great suggestions for topics that I received today. So for me, it's always very helpful if you let me know what you want to know. So even if I don't ask for input, always please feel free if you have any questions to send me a direct message on what kind of topic you want me to talk about in my lives. And if you join the chat, as always, please let us know where you come from and also let us know how your day was. So was it a good day? Was it a bad day? Was it a positive day? A negative day? Was it productive? So please let us know right where you come from in the chat and also how your day was. Okay, so let's start with the topic. Today, a great topic, a very interesting topic, and this topic is relevant for all of you, okay? Because today we will talk about how COVID-19 changed management consulting. And I will structure this live in mainly in 4 parts. So the first part will be that I will talk about how COVID-19 changed the business of management consulting. The second I will talk about is how COVID-19 changed the hiring in management consulting. Then third, I will talk about how COVID-19 changed the work of management or in management consulting. And fourth, I will give you my personal opinion and of course an outlook on how I think things will develop in the future. So let's start. First of all, so how did COVID-19 change the business side of management consulting? And to answer that question, I need to give you a little bit of background how the consulting industry works. So I get asked a lot on how a negative or positive economy affects management consulting. Okay. So the question is, are consulting revenues higher if there's a bad economy because there are a lot of restructurings, or if there's a good economy because there's a lot of money in the market to spend on growth projects? The answer is both cases are great for management consulting. Okay, so the case number one is that there is a bad economy. And this usually means that, revenues are declining and that companies need to work on their cost structure. And usually what they do is that they find some money in the bank account and spend it on expensive consultants in order to reduce costs. Okay, so this is very normal. And so usually if the economy goes down, this is positive for the consulting industry. On the other hand, the other case is positive for us as well, because if the economy is increasing, so if we have a positive economy, there is a lot of cash in the bank accounts, and people or companies usually want to do some kind of growth projects because now they want to enter new markets, they want to launch new products, and they want to maybe do some M&A activities because they have a lot of cash available. So also if the economy is booming, this is also great for management consultancies. The only thing, and this is the third scenario, that is bad for management consultants is if there is uncertainty in the market, okay? So if the companies don't know if the economy goes up or if the economy goes down, what they usually do is that they keep their cash very, very tight, okay? And the first cost position that they usually cut is to cut on external workforce, so to cut the costs of management consultants. So the only case that is really bad for for the management consulting industry in terms of business is if there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. And now if we talk about COVID-19, I think it's important to understand that we had one point where there was a lot of uncertainty, and this was last year in March. So maybe you remember last year, I think it was March the 13th or something about that, where the entire stock market crashed for, I think there was a 50% decline or something like that. And obviously the entire situation, so it was not only that day, it was the entire period, so quarter one, quarter two. And this was a period where there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. So companies didn't know what kind of lockdowns they should expect. They didn't know how serious COVID was. They didn't know how governments would react to it. So there was a lot of uncertainty. So what happened, especially last year in Q1 and Q2, is that most companies cut off their consulting budgets. Okay, so for most consulting companies, we had a situation that almost no project was extended, that almost no new engagement was made. And especially Q1 and Q2 was very, very difficult for the entire consulting industry last year. But then things changed. So once the companies knew how bad COVID really was, they had a certain need for action, okay? And it was around, let's say, Q3 last year when companies started to spend money on consultants again. Since then, nevertheless, we had a kind of consulting boom, okay? So the industry is booming for the last 3 to 4 quarters, okay? And the reason for that is that there are mainly 4 main types of projects that consultancies sell a lot, and there are 4 main problems that companies actually have. So the first one is that some companies, they suffered a lot under COVID-19, and they now have to reduce their costs. So they hire consultants to find cost improvement potential. So the second problem that many companies have is that they need a kind of sales reactivation after the period of lockdown. Okay, so many consumer goods companies, for example, they need to kind of reactivate their sales. So they hire consultants to kind of develop sales reactivation programs. Okay. Also, many companies need to manage their cash. So there are some companies who are short of cash because they kind of suffered a lot in terms of revenue due to COVID-19, and there are other companies who have a lot of cash available because, for example, they were supported by the government. Okay, so companies also need to manage their cash. And also we have the Great Reset. So this means that we have a lot of digital transformation and sustainable transformation. And those 4 project types, like cost reduction, sales reactivation, cash management, and transformation in terms of digitization and sustainable transformation, these are the 4 main projects or project types that really drive the consulting industry at the moment and that really cause a certain boom within the industry. So I would say, in terms of how did COVID-19 or how does COVID-19 affect the management consulting industry in terms of business, I would say that last year, especially in Q1 and 2, was very, very difficult for the entire consulting industry. But since then, we had a real boom. As always, by the way, if you have any questions, then please just write them in the chat and I will answer them afterwards. So once I did after doing my content, I will go through the questions and answer all of them, just as a remark. So this was the first part. So how did COVID-19 affect kind of business side of management consulting? Then the second question I want to answer is how did COVID-19 affect the hiring in management consulting? And I think it is quite similar to the business side, right? So last year in Q1 and Q2, some companies or some consulting companies stopped hiring. So I know, I will not drop any names, but I know a lot of companies that actually, they didn't communicate that, but they actually more or less stopped hiring. And the reason for that was obviously because there was almost no revenue in Q1, Q2 last year. So consulting companies were very hesitant to hire new people, obviously. But nevertheless, there were also some companies who took advantage of that and hired even more aggressively than usual. But this was definitely a smaller percentage compared to those companies who stopped their hiring. But as the business went up again, also the hiring went up again. And at least on what I actually see in the market at the moment, I think like the hiring level is similar to like before COVID-19. So at the moment, I almost know for sure that there are no real limitations in terms of hiring new consultants. I think the level now, it's probably not direct proportional to the boom, but it's certainly on the level of, let's say, 2019, okay? So I would say that hiring has normalized again, okay? And this is the second thing I want to talk about, how COVID-19 affects the hiring in management consulting. The third thing I want to talk about is how COVID-19 changes the work of management consultants. And here I have a couple of points. First, and probably most obvious, traveling has been heavily reduced. Okay, so like back in the old days, as I like to say, we traveled like every week. So a typical consulting week was like going up Monday very early in the morning, like 4 or 5 a.m. taking the first flight to the client. Okay, and then on Thursday evening you take the flight in the evening back home. Friday is office day, and then the weekend you are at home. So this was kind of a typical consulting work week. But now, we don't travel anymore. So we usually, are only at the office or at the home office. Okay, so there's no or almost no traveling. I had a project last summer where I had to fly, a little bit. But almost none of my colleagues today are really, flying to the client. Okay, so this is point one in terms of how did COVID-19 affect the work in management consulting. So first of all, we don't travel as much as we used to. Second, obviously, many consultants work from home. And I know at some companies that the offices are closed, so they are still closed, so that most consultants work from home. And this can be definitely difficult, especially if you are a new joiner, because it's very hard, obviously, to kind of connect to your peers, to kind of create a team spirit. But obviously, home office also has some benefits, but I will talk about that in a second. Okay, so this is the second trend that we see, that obviously consultants work a lot from home. Third, client communication completely changed. Okay, so like in 2019, so it was very common that you have that you had kind of physical meetings with the client, that you had a lot of client events, client dinners. And to be honest, this is a very important part of management consulting, because this is where you really can build relationships. Most of the client interaction that we have now at the moment, though, is through video calls. Okay, so obviously kind of video calls, they are still better than only audio calls, but nevertheless, kind of obviously a video call, it's much more difficult to build a relationship through a digital device than building a relationship if you meet each other in person. Okay, but just the third thing that changed, the client communication is mainly done through video calls. And fourth thing that changed is that team events almost got cancelled entirely, at least most companies do like kind of digital team events, but here the same principle applies. So it's not the same as like working with your team like for 4 days in one place and experiencing all the ups and downs together in one room. Okay, so I would say also the team environment kind of changed due to COVID-19. So overall, what are the positive and the negative things that changed in the work of a management consultant due to COVID-19? So I think kind of the negative things are definitely that you have less team spirit. And I always say like we have a kind of SWAT team feeling in a consulting team. So SWAT, you probably know these special units from the US Army. And I think, I feel as a consultant team like a SWAT unit. Okay, so a highly specialized workforce on a secret mission where you experience together a lot of ups and downs. So this kind of what I connect to, how I see my consulting team. And obviously you don't have that anymore, okay? So obviously, I mean, in most teams you have a very good atmosphere because you have a lot of calls, and also you try to do some digital team events, but you don't have this kind of extreme experience together anymore, where you like really work in one room and spend like the entire week together. And I think this is a big part of management consulting, and I actually really miss it at the moment, to be around with my teammates and fight for the success on a consulting team. Okay, so that's definitely a negative thing, I would say. The second negative thing is that you don't have the same lifestyle as you used to have. Okay, and most people who join the consulting industry could also join other industries, like for example venture capital, or like banking, or go in a corporate function. But the reason why they choose consulting is because they want to see a lot of different places, and because they want to work with many different people on different projects with different companies. And I think this is definitely limited. So I'm not talking about, going to the fancy hotels and flying business class. Of course, this is nice as well. But I think like the kind of experience that we all seek as management consultants, I mean, it's heavily reduced at the moment, because I mean, most of us, we are just working from home like everyone else does. So many benefits of being a consultant, you cannot utilize them at the moment. And this is also a negative thing that I would say, is that lifestyle in management consulting certainly has changed. But then there are also two very positive changes due to COVID-19. So the first one is that you are definitely more productive, because you don't have kind of traveling time, okay? And traveling, as I just said, is part of lifestyle and can be nice, but also, let's be honest, it's very unproductive. I mean, because let's say, you have to pack your suitcase, then, you have to prepare for the week, then you have to drive to the airport, then you have to check in, then you are in a plane. I mean, and this takes like every Monday, like 3 or 4 hours where you can actually work. I mean, you are awake, and obviously you have to get up very early, but you cannot really work. And now due to COVID, since we're not traveling anymore, I mean, life is much easier, okay? So you have kind of regular sleeping hours, because you don't have to take those early flights. And obviously, I mean, once you get up and sit on a desk, you can immediately start to work, and you do not waste any time driving around, which is actually very unproductive. So I would say your productivity as a consultant overall heavily increased, and I think this is a very positive thing. Also, a very positive thing is that you have a much better work-life balance, and I think this is also mainly because of the traveling. Obviously, it's much easier to for you. I mean, if you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, because since you're most of the time at home anyways, it's much easier to connect with your partner, to spend some free time together. Also on the weekend, you're not that tired, so it's easier to meet friends like on Thursday evening or Friday evening. Also, you have a lot of time and a lot of flexibility actually for your sports routine, for example. Nutrition is much easier because you can cook from home. So I would say the entire work-life balance has heavily increased due to COVID-19 as a management consultant. Okay, so to summarize, negative things are that you have a kind of less team spirit. Also, the lifestyle has changed. These are the two negative things, I would say, due to COVID-19. But the positive side is that you are much more productive and have a better work-life balance. Before I will give you an outlook, just a reminder, if you have any questions, then please write them now in the chat. In a second, I will go through the questions if you have any. So just write in the chat and I will answer them directly, or you can write me in personal message after that. But now let's talk about the outlook. So how do I think will things change or continue in the future? So if we talk about the future, and I mean like the next 2 to 3 years, okay, I think there's one most important thing to consider, okay, and this is the economic situation. So I don't know how familiar you are with the markets or with the kind of economic dependencies or interdependencies but there is a big danger of a potential stagflation. And what that means is that you have an inflation, okay, so a devaluation of money. At the same time, you have a kind of a stable economy or a decreasing economy. And this is usually a very dangerous time, because this is the time where you have a lot of stock crashes, where you kind of unemployment rises, and this is usually a very, very difficult situation. So I think there is a non-zero probability that we see a similar crash like we had last year again. And this obviously, as I just described earlier in the video or in the live, this can negatively impact the consulting industry. So I think that as a caveat is very important if we talk about the outlook. There's always the danger of a potential stagflation, and this could be a problem for management consulting. Besides that, I would say that if we don't have a crash, okay, and that's the basic assumption here, that hiring will definitely normalize, and I think there will be a further increase in the consulting industry in terms of revenues. So I see more like a positive outlook for the consulting industry. Also, I think that kind of the traveling habits, they kind of stay. So I think that traveling overall will reduce or will stay at a low level. I mean, many people say that management consultants won't travel at all in the future, but I don't think that is true, because especially in the strategy consulting sector or management consulting sector, I think this personal client interaction is very, very important to build a relationship. And don't forget that paying for consultants, especially in the management consulting sector, is usually very expensive. And therefore, it's also very important to build a relationship, because you don't spend like thousands of euros per day for people that you don't know personally. And also for the consultancies, it's much more difficult to do a certain kind of upsell if you don't have a personal relationship. So I think that especially like the project managers, the more senior people who really have client interaction, I think they don't will reduce their traveling after COVID-19, but maybe like the kind of analysts, like the kind of also in the more operational consulting field, maybe there will the traveling will be decreased or reduced there. That's probably a trend that I see. So and the third thing is that probably home office will become very normal for all of us. So if you don't have a proper home office yet, maybe it's time to build one. So maybe you try to organize a nice desk and a nice chair and a nice light. Because I think home office will be kind of the standard or one kind of standard in the future for management consultants. Okay, so to summarize, I think, first of all, as an outlook, there will be a danger of a potential stagflation, and this could negatively impact the overall economy. Second, I think that hiring will normalize again, or continue like that, and revenues will grow. Third, traveling will be reduced, or it will stay on a low level for all the analysts and more operational consultants, but I think it will increase again for all the project managers and more management consulting oriented companies. And fourth, I think that home office will become a kind of standard in management consulting, so that you don't always have to go to the office. So that's it. That's how I see the impact of COVID-19 on the management consulting industry. So I talked about the impact on business. I talked about the impact on the hiring process. I also talked about the impact on the work as a management consultant in general. And I also give you my opinion on the outlook. So if you have any questions, then now is your chance to write in the comments so that I can answer them. And if you missed the first part, obviously you can go to IGTV. I will upload the video after that on the platform. Okay, so I will go through the chat now. If you have any questions, then please write them. But I see that kind of chat interaction was kind of low today. Why is that? Okay. Okay, no questions. So that's fine for me too. You're very welcome, Patricia. And thank you for being with me. And yeah, thank you for your time. It was, as always, a big pleasure. And for me, it's now time to go to bed. I had some very short nights yesterday and the day before. So I wish you a very good evening. Hope to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be a live at 10 p.m. CET as always. And don't forget, on Saturday there will be a live session, a live Q&A. And I already received a lot of questions today. But if you have further questions that you want me to answer on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. CET, then please just write them as a personal message and I will answer them. So with that being said, I hope you have a great evening. I wish you a very good night, depending on where you are in the world, and talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye.